Thank you. Are we good to go? All right.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Jeremy was, thank you. I'm delighted to have you all here. And Jeremy was making reference to how we've been doing one of these salons each week for the past few weeks. And it's been such a pleasure for me because these sessions to me are more than just presentations, but they're an opportunity for me to explore these ideas as well with a community of seekers. And as those of you who have been part of our salons in the past know, I really do very much regard us as a circle of co-seekers. We believe, each of us, I think, very seriously that there's a metaphysical dimension to life, that there's an extra physical dimension to life, and that our minds, in some ways, are the medium through which we experience that dimension. Not our minds alone, our emotions, our bodies, but intellect opens the door to extra physical forces and powers of causation. And it's very hard to codify and nail down precisely how we experience that and why we experience that. I give a theory of it in the Miracle Club, which people can get and evaluate in light of their own experience. But it's so vital that we have practical steps, fresh steps, different methods, hands-on techniques that we can use to test the abilities and the potentialities of our minds. And that's precisely what this evening's session is about, the 10-day miracle challenge. And there's so much that I want to share with you about this very, very simple exercise. And what's appealing to me about it is that it is incredibly simple. It's a way of trying to harness a deep period of time in pursuit of an aim or an aspiration. And as I'll talk about a little bit later in our session tonight, I really, truly want you to feel that there's no limit or parameter or restriction on you in terms of the aim that you seek after in connection with this 10-day exercise. It's very, very important to me that people feel at liberty to seek out any ethical aim. And what I mean by an ethical aim is one that is nonviolent, is one that doesn't disrupt
Mitch, I think we lost you there. Do you want to try to, can you just try to say something? Okay. Yeah, I think Mitch let me know that he just moved to a new apartment or a new space, and there may be some issues with connection. Let me just...
I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good.
Sorry about that, you guys. We'll get through it. And if this happens again, we'll make it work. Anyway, I was saying that as part of our experience here in these Miracle Club salons, we're not interested, at least from my perspective, in the question of limiting or defining or prescribing anyone's wishes. My presumption, which we've talked about in previous sessions, is that as long as you're proceeding with nonviolence, which I define as not violating someone else's ability to pursue his or her own sense of highest self, then you have no apologies to make to anybody, including yourself, about what you might be interested in. So my wish is for this exercise to really put you in touch with something for 10 days that you really, truly want. You're not making a decision that you have to stick by for the rest of your life. You're not making a decision that's irreversible, but you are focusing on something that you want with absolute intimacy and passion. That's really the only precondition to this exercise. I want to say how I came to this exercise and what I hope it really of how to do it, which is really very, very simple. Number one, I think that one of the things, and by the way, let me just ask, and Jeremy, you can raise your hand. Are you hearing me okay? Am I coming through okay at this point? Okay, good. Number one of the things I've been working with lately, and that I invite you to work with as well, is focusing in on your desires in a way that does not confuse means and ends. I've always thought to myself that I'm a very goal-oriented person. I'm a very product-oriented kind of person, broadly speaking. And yet sometimes I think rather than focusing on the precise thing that I want, I get caught up in focusing on the means that I think will get me the thing that I want. The simplest example is this. One time, somebody was telling my hero, Neville Goddard, the metaphysical teacher, that she very deeply wanted a certain job. And Neville said to her, look, if you want that particular job, then I'm behind it 100%. But I'm not sure that you really want that job. What you really want, perhaps, is security, and that job seems to you the entry point to security. And so he asked his student to think about that. And he often detected that somebody was asking for something, but the thing that they wanted was not the real aim itself. The real aim was being obfuscated, was unspoken, was not being clarified. Whereas people kept focusing on the means to the aim, or what they perceived as the means to the aim, which tended to slow down their creative abilities. And I had a friend who told me a story about his own experience with that line of thinking that was very, very powerful. And it's an extraordinary story. It's so extraordinary that it almost begs disbelief. But my friend is a hugely honorable person and a hugely ethical person, and I know he was telling me the truth. And it's somebody that some of you all may know, and that is the ESP researcher, Dean Radin. And Dean is not only a great friend and a teacher to me, has guided me through some of the thickets of serious clinical ESP research, a field that's very, very important to me. But I emerged as the inheritor of the great ESP researcher J.B. Rhine. And any of you who know me know that J.B. is really one of my true intellectual heroes. He pioneered clinical ESP research in America at Duke University starting in the early 1930s. And he was a scientist of such impeccability and decency and honor and industriousness. And I think Dean, although he's a different persona and he has different priorities and different personality, certainly, than JB, I think Dean brings that same to this controversial field of research. It's controversial only because we don't know what to do with its implications, not because of its data. The data is above reproach, but the implications are very difficult for our materialist culture to digest. So Dean was telling me this fantastic story, and the story is this, that he was gathering research, massive amounts of data in connection with a precognition experiment that he was conducting at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is the laboratory in Northern California where he keeps shop. And Dean had amassed huge amounts of data with a vast array of subjects in which he was testing for whether people could demonstrate precognitive reactions to certain images that they were being shown, reactions that could be measured perhaps in bodily changes like secretion from adrenal glands, or arousal, or sweat, or the release of endorphins, or other things that might be prompted by viewing images that are either particularly arousing or upsetting, but that generate some sort of emotional reaction, some sort of physical reaction. So Dean had all this data, and he needed a way to organize it. And there was a particular computer program that he wished to use to organize this data that was written in a language that he did not know. And brilliant as he is, he didn't have time to learn this language. He also needed help inputting all of this data. He needed somebody who had some sort of a background in the neurosciences, particularly somebody who was an academically trained neuroscientist who would understand the nature of the data that he was working with. He needed help from such a person to input this data into a program whose language he did not speak. And so he was thinking to himself, this is sort of a tough situation to be in. I've got these mounds of data. I need to organize it using a computer program written in a language that I don't speak. And I need somebody to help me to do this, and to help me to do it preferably for free or for very little money. He had kind of reached the end of his purse strings in terms of the budget he had for this project. And to make matters more complicated, he needed somebody with a neuroscience background who was willing to be associated with psychical research, with ESP research, which, as I was alluding earlier, remains controversial. Not because of the data itself. Anybody who honestly reviews the data, as J.B. Rhine's data was reviewed and juried over and over and over for decades, finds that the data in these good, serious experiments is unpolluted, but the implications are unacceptable to most people in the sciences. So you're potentially sullying yourself, you're sullying your reputation if you get involved with ESP research. So, here's Dean facing this problem and saying, what am I going to do? And he's thinking, well, maybe I could get a grant and I could hire a graduate student to do it, or maybe there's a graduate student in the neurosciences who would want to do it for free. But then there's the whole issue of a person getting involved with a disreputable field. And, he's thinking about, how can I get a budget? How can I get money? How can I get the resources that I need to bring in the person who can help me complete this experiment? And an assistant of his said to him, you're going about this wrong. What you need to do is focus on the very, very thing that you want. You're not looking for a grant. You're not looking for, maybe one person who knows the computer language and one graduate student. You're muddying the waters. What's the end game here? What's the precise thing that you want? And Dean said, well, look, the precise thing that I want is a neuroscientist who has some command over this computer language, who can come in and help me finish the experiment, and who can do it for free. That's what I want. And so his assistant said to him, okay, now you're clear. Focus on just that. Okay. So this is what happens. About a week later, a visitor comes to Dean's labs, who is a professor of neuroscience from the University of Toulouse in France, takes a tour of the labs and tells Dean that he would like to volunteer his services in helping Dean proceed with some of his experiments. And Dean describes to him the precog experiment that he just did and what his needs are. And it turns out that not only does this professor from the University of Toulouse know the computer language that Dean needed to use in order to organize his data, which is called MATLAB, but he's the very person who wrote the language. He wrote MATLAB. He is a tenured professor of neuroscience at the University of Toulouse who actively wants to volunteer his services to Dean in his lab. And because he's already tenured, he's not concerned about damage to his reputation because his job and his academic career are already secure. Dean had never expected that he would find somebody who not only fit all the credentials that he needed in terms of doing it for free, in terms of being a academically recognized, in this case tenured neuroscientist at a recognized international university, but this was the very person who wrote MATLAB, the program that Dean didn't have time to learn, but vitally needed in order to organize his data and complete his experiment. And Dean said to me, and I tell this story in the Miracle Club, so you can read about it there. Dean said to me that this has happened to him several times, that when he gets just profoundly clear on precisely what he wants, remarkable synchronicities occur. Now, one of the things that I mentioned in the book and that I must add here is that it's very important to remember that in addition to clarity, Dean has also dedicated vast hours and hours of sweat equity to his field as a serious psychical researcher. He has dedicated vast hours to filing for grants, to doing deeply, highly structured, sometimes tedious experiments with vast numbers of subjects. He has put up with unjust criticism, sabotage of his Wikipedia page, his research being run down from people who don't have time or, frankly, the ability, in many cases, to even understand and review the data in a professionally appropriate way. So the sacrifices that Dean has made to get to this point should not be underestimated, and I think that that is part of a whole with coming to a place of mental clarity. It's not just a question of sitting down and saying, well, gee, I'm going to figure out exactly what I want. What you want has to be connected in some organic, compelling way with efforts, training, education, labor that you've put in other parts of your life. It's all one whole. It's all one whole. But a missing piece of that whole for Dean, for you, for me, can be exquisite clarity, exquisite clarity. And I'll find, even though I talk about this quite a bit, I'll find my own focus wandering at certain points. You know, I'll tell myself, for example, oh, I don't know, let's say there's something that I want from another person. I'll tell myself, I want to hear from this person, whether it's yes or no on some question. But what I might really want is I need the vital assistance of a qualified person on a certain question. Or I say to myself, I want to finish this deadline so that I could take a break, which is funny because I never actually take breaks. But maybe what I really want is not so much to finish the deadline in order to take a break, but maybe I need to just let go of certain things, take some profoundly necessary time off for mental recovery. Not that I ever actually do that. But what I'm trying to say to you is that you need to get in touch with the thing that you really want, and really want with a pitch perfect clarity. And I'll tell the story of how I came to this exercise. I was in Boulder, Colorado, shooting a TV show. And I was feeling a little stressed out. And I went to dinner the night before the shoot with a producer. And to be perfectly frank with you, we had a very nice, relaxed dinner, but it was a little too relaxed. And there was a lot of drinking going on at this dinner. And drinking, if you don't have an addiction, can be a lot of fun. But a hangover is not a lot of fun. And I woke up the next morning with a hangover. And as those of you know who have had hangovers, they're often accompanied by a feeling of depression. The euphoria that you may experience when you're drinking is paid for the next day by a commensurate drop in energy, a feeling of depression. Something good to remember. And I sort of went through my day really feeling very, very down, very, very depressed. There was something that I wanted in my life that I just simply felt was out of reach. Now, usually I'm very, very disclosing of my aims and my wishes, but in this case, it's just simply too intimate to disclose to you. So there's a limit to morbid self-disclosures that even I know. But I say that in a spirit of fellowship with you, because you don't have to disclose to me. And in fact, I encourage you not to, what your aim is, what you're going to bring to the 10-day miracle challenge. And I'll say more about that. But the aim was a very intimate one, it was a very personal one, it was a very private one. And it seemed impossible. It seemed out of reach. And it was the kind of thing that I could have conditioned in any number of ways. But I said to myself, not this time, not this time. I'm not going to condition in any way what I want. And I thought to myself, I'm going to set a very fixed and limited period of days in front of me in which I focus all of my mental energies, to the best extent that I can, onto my desire for this one goal, that this one goal would become the focus of my affirmations, visualizations, prayers, things that I repeat to myself as I'm falling to sleep at night. This would become kind of a beacon to me. And around the same time, someone wrote to me, someone had found my email address on my website, it's very easy to find, and wrote to me. And she told me that she was struggling with a personal issue in her life. And I thought to myself, okay, there's a good congruity here that my correspondent and I seem to be going through something together at the same time. I didn't know this person, just a stranger, but a seeker, a co-seeker is never really a stranger. And so I said to her, look, I'm, sitting in this hotel room in Boulder, Colorado, hungover, depressed, feeling terrible. I say this because I never want to give anybody the misimpression that I'm always walking around like Mr. Smiley Face. I struggle with all the same things that everybody does, all the time. And I said to her, look, let's do an exercise together. Let's both of us draw up a grid. And this grid will be for 10 consecutive days. And, you don't have to tell me precisely what it is you want. I don't have to tell you precisely what it is I want. But we'll both mutually support one another over the course of these 10 days, intensively on a particular goal. And let's stay in touch each day or every other day, kind of help one another's morale, tell one another how we're doing, and see what happens at the end of these 10 days. And the first 2 days into this private exercise, I didn't really feel very confident in what I was doing, because I felt like what I was seeking was maybe unrealistic. But on the third or fourth day, an idea came to me that seemed like it could hold for. And as I researched this idea that came to me, I found that it was actually practically workable. And by the end of the 10 days, I had acted on this idea in such a way that I got something very, very close to what I was looking for. something that I really thought at the outset of my exercise was improbable. And I realized that one of the things I did during the course of this exercise, and this is a vital, vital step, is that I not only was very, very specific about what I wanted, not the means to what I wanted, but what I wanted. That was number one. But number two is that I did not condition or place any terms on how the thing I wanted could come to me. And that, that is of vital, vital importance. Don't condition or place terms or limitations or some sort of limiting framework on how the thing desired will reach you. It may reach you in ways that are so unexpected or that are so mundane that you may be apt to ignore its arrival. It is possible that things that we want do come to us, but they come to us disguised in such a way that we don't even recognize our own deliverance. There are a lot of ancient myths across many different cultures about gods or angels or deific beings arriving as scraggly travelers, arriving as wanderers, arriving as paupers or vassals. Every culture around the world has these myths of the gods arriving, visiting somebody unawares, disguised as some sort of a hapless wanderer or something. That's among the reasons why some societies, particularly in the East and the Middle East, take hospitality very, very seriously. There are many reasons why they take hospitality seriously, including practical reasons. But the notion that the next wanderer who comes around the bend, who's in need of water, who needs to wash his or her feet or whatever, could be a god, could be an angel disguised. There's a lot of wisdom in that myth. And when I say myth, I don't mean something that's untrue, but I mean something that's actually a receptacle of truth itself. Something that's truer than history in the sense that it conveys a psychological verity to us. So I think there's a great deal of wisdom in that myth. And I think that it pertains not only to visitations by higher beings or the arrival of higher ideas, but the arrival of actual circumstances that we need. And sometimes we overlook them because they seem so indirect or so off the mark from how we pictured something would reach us, or so ordinary, or just so weird, so kind of off the wall. But I tell you, sure as I'm sitting here, at the end of those 10 days, an idea came to me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It was a breakthrough idea, and it brought me something very, very, very close to exactly what I wanted, which at the outset seemed improbable. So I decided to try this exercise a second time. And again, the second time, I found my way to something very, very close to what I wanted, though of a different tenor and nature than I thought it would reach me. Now, full disclosure, I'm on day number 8 today of the third round of this 10-day miracle challenge. And to draw or offer you any conclusions, but I've seen promising signs of what I want. I've seen promising signs. And I hope you'll forgive me that I'm being purposefully vague with you about what I asked for, because all these things that I'm describing to you They're personal things. They're intimate things. And I think that there's a power that we all have in holding our own wishes and desires close to the vest. I think that we're too conditioned to share with people, as if sharing things with people somehow is in itself always of therapeutic benefit or always of benefit in terms of sorting out ideas or arriving at something. I'm asking you, and I'm inviting you into a different kind of sharing that's more profound. You don't have to disclose to me or anybody else what you want when you do this exercise. I would only ask, because it will make it more powerful for you and for me and for everybody else, that we all do it together. Hold the best wishes of your colleagues on this webinar in your heart, in your intellect, while you're doing this exercise. Now, I said to you, I'm on day 8, but I will be doing this with you for a full 10 days, because as soon as day 8, I am going to devise a challenge for myself. I don't know what I'll be asking for, but I feel that I want to be doing it with you. Don't worry about, should I begin tonight? Should I begin tomorrow night? Should I begin Saturday? It doesn't matter. We'll all overlap together. We'll all be doing it in an overlapping way, and we'll effectively be doing most of it together. That's my wish. Now, so how to do it? It's pretty obvious and it's pretty clear, but I will go through some of the steps. First of all, get yourself a nice notebook. You all have a nice notebook, don't you? Hold it up. Not something to write on the back of a note card or a sticky pad or an envelope or something like that. This is your life, and you should treat it very seriously. When you sign a contract, you don't use some old pen that has bite marks on it. You use a special pen, and you sit down and you sign it in a special way. Materials are important. Get a beautiful, beautiful notebook. Figure out precisely what it is you want to dedicate yourself to for these 10 days. Now, practice than some of my friends do in the world of ceremonial magic or chaos magic. I love what they do, and I respect what they do. But sometimes within other forms of ritual or ceremonial exercises, magic pursuits, what have you, you'll be told, do your ritual once, make it hugely powerful, and then forget all about it. And that's what allows it to enter the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind will unleash the energies and forces and directions necessary for you to arrive at your destination. I respect that practice, but that's not my practice. I believe that through the medium of our conscious mind, we impress the subconscious mind. I believe that focus, intention, labor, feeling the wish fulfilled to the greatest extent possible is the greatest guarantor of success. I respect other systems. I try to understand other systems. I work with other systems, but ours is a system of intention, of focus. So what I ask you to do, first and foremost, is not to write something down and forget it, but to write something down and brand it on your soul, so to speak. What is the thing that you want in these next 10 days? And don't think about realism or lack of realism. I mean, obviously, we're not chasing after unicorns here. We're chasing after things that can be seen and can be understood as part of the whole of your life. If Dean Radin had never done ESP research anymore and he thought, gee, I'd like a tenured professor of neuroscience to come and help me, it wouldn't have happened because there would have been no context for it. It would have been chimerical. It would have been just a daydream, just a fantasy. It has to be somehow contextual with your existence. So I want you to be bold. I want you to be brave. I want you to be fearless. But remember, we're not just kind of playing games here. Like, gee, I would look for Michelle Obama to come to my house and have dinner. That, then it seems to me more like a daydream than like an aim. So be bold and be brave, but it should be something that's interwoven with the context of your existence. That's all. That's all. And be very brave and be very bold. Write down your aim and don't confuse the means with the end. Don't confuse the means with the end. You might say, you know, I want some sum of. It's the very thing itself that you want. Be naked with yourself. Remember, you don't have to share this or disclose this to anybody. It's exquisitely private. So write down what you want and write it down in such a way that it speaks to the deepest desires of your heart. And I don't care what it is. And I don't want you to be embarrassed. There's no room for embarrassment here. Nobody's going to give you a lecture about materialism or as if there's some difference between what we can see and what we can't see, as if there's some difference between inner and outer, as if there's some difference between the material and the transcendent. It's all part of one whole. It's all part of one whole. And I want you to feel at liberty to ask for, to pursue whatever you want. Again, the only ethic is one of nonviolence, that we're not doing anything knowingly or obviously to disrupt another person's ability to pursue his or her own highest sense of self. Other than that, you have nothing to answer for whatsoever. And the only reason I add that stricture is because, as I was saying, if there's no difference between inner and outer, higher and lower, as above, so below, then there's a human wholeness, there's a human unity, and I believe that very, very deeply. There's a cosmic reciprocity. So we have very good reasons to be nonviolent. It's ultimately what we do to another, we do to self. We know that. Intuitively, we all know that. So, you've arrived at your goal. You feel passionately for it. You're unapologetic about it. You're unembarrassed by it. You don't have to disclose it to anybody. And you know that you haven't confused the means to your goal with the goal itself. You know what you want. Then, write down your 10-day grid. You can use the grid that was supplied by Tim Bota, the artist, which Jeremy used as the screensaver to our session, which you can also find on my Twitter and Facebook feeds, or you can write your own grid. This may sound like a funny comment I'm going to make here, but it harkens back to the comment of getting a nice notebook. Write your grid with exquisite neatness and exquisite care. I mean, you're being kind of an artist of the soul here. You should take this seriously enough to really put great care into it. You know, get a pen or pencil that's new, sharpen it. I got a pencil the other night that said Grit and Glory. It was at this tattoo shop around the block. I like this pencil. So, sharpen it, get your pen, your paper, whatever. Do what you're doing as if you're creating a work of art. This is soul craft. Take it seriously. Create your 10-day grid, and that's it. Begin. Focus all of your energies, everything that you do, every practice that you, from chanting and prayer to meditating and affirmations to visualizing to repeating what you wish to yourself as you go to bed at night. Look at your goals several times a day, write it down, look at it, make it your constant companion. Life conspires to steal our attention from us all the time. Our own fragmented psyches steal our attention from us all the time. But the aim here is to just spend 10 days focused on that which you want. And know in your heart that you're not doing it alone. I'm doing it with you. Everybody here on this webinar, or most of us, are doing it with you. And you can also write to me and reach out to me over the course of your 10 days. Many of you have my email. If you don't have it, it's easy to find. If you don't hear back from me, it's only because it's temporary. You will hear back from me. A day or two might pass, but you will hear back from me. My only request, I hate to condition this, but I just have to for purposes of time, is try to keep your emails concise as possible. Only because I try to deal with different messages, and I do write back to everybody, almost everybody who writes to me. And I'll certainly write back to you. So, because we're doing this together. So you can always come to me and say, wow, I really lost my focus today, but I'm trying to get back on it and everything. And listen, I'll have the same kind of day. We will support one another. Think of it. It's just 10 days. It's just 10 days. And the all-important thing and the key rule, as I alluded earlier, is don't condition how your wish arrives. It might arrive in very unusual ways. It has happened to me. It has happened to me. And it has been, frankly, potentially life-changing. And it came to me in the form of an idea. And that idea led me to take a certain action, which at first I thought might be impractical. But when I did a little research, I found that it was practical. And it helped me. It helped me. So there you have the 10-day miracle challenge. Why do I call it a miracle challenge? I don't use the term miracle lightly. I believe, as I write in the Miracle Club, that a miracle, very simply, is a fortuitous departure from all expected circumstance. A fortuitous departure from all expected circumstance. And in that vein, miracles do occur. In fact, no one would argue that catastrophes occur, tragedies occur. Of course they do. Of course they do. But as such, it stands to reason that extraordinary things occur too. And my contention is that our minds, our thoughts, our psyches, our emotively charged thoughts, our mental pictures collude in the arrival of miracles. I tell you, friends, I believe that with every fiber of my intellect and heart. I would never send you or me on any kind of a fool's errand. So let's try this experiment together, the 10-day miracle challenge. Come up with your aim. Make sure you're not confusing the means and the ends. We are going for the ends. Draw up your grid. Use the practices that appear in the Miracle Club that we have been talking about here on this salon for the past several weeks. Any that you want to try, any that you have already tried, the only key thing is to use these 10 days as a period of absolute focus, and do not condition the manner in which your wish may reach you. And let your wish be bold, let it be great, let it be honorable, let it be epic. Our only concession to
Oh, sorry, Mitch. I think we lost you again. If you can hear us, just pop back in, let me know. And then we can repeat that last part. Sorry, folks. Let me just send Mitch a quick email note. We have a backup plan for his cell phone. 1 second.
see me again?
Yes, you're back.
Good. Sorry about that, you guys.
The last thing we missed was you said, may the wish be bold, may it be honorable, may it be epic, our only concession. And we didn't hear that part.
Our only concession to limits, if you will, is that the wish should be something that fits the context of our lives, something that you've been working on, something that's part of who you are intrinsically, whatever it is. Other than that, let it be fantastic. Let it be brave. Let it be epic. Let it be great. We're not doing this to figure out better ways of rearranging our sock drawer. We're doing this to storm heaven together. So let's work on this together. And let's be tremendously bold about it. This is 10 days where we throw out all considerations or apologies or concessions that we make to so-called realism. And we agencies of thought and emotion and all of our psyches together. And I ask you to always keep in mind that I will be doing this with you, and that I think probably most people listening to this will be doing this with you. You're not doing this alone. Your goal is private, but there's an act of sharing that goes deeper than self-disclosure. We're pooling our energies together. So I thank you all very much, and thanks for bearing with us during the digital interruptions. And I want to open up things for exchange and discussion right now. Questions, comments, thoughts, everything's fair game.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. And if anyone has had any issues with the audio tonight, we have recorded this, so you'll be able to re-listen. And I also took some notes. I think they're pretty good. So if you were looking for a particular line that Mitch said, hopefully I caught it here. Okay, so our first question is from Jim, and Jim is asking, can you clarify exactly what goes on the grid? I may have missed that.
10 boxes that are intended to mark off 10 consecutive days. I'll show you my own. I'm covering up my wish. Can you see it?
Yeah.
That's all. Very simple grid. Just a simple grid of 10 boxes. You can also use the grid that Tim Boda supplied. And you're of course to mark off each box consecutively. I think it's preferable to mark off each box at night. Mark off each box as you're preparing to go to bed at night. Just let yourself know that this was a full day of effort. Does that clarify it?
It does for me. I think so. Let's see. So Sarah, would you like to unmute yourself? I see your hand is raised, or I can unmute you too. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Mitch.
Hi.
So I hear you saying the word epic, and my desire is big, but unless something I believe not possible with the laws of physics happened, it's not going to happen in 10 days. So if it's that size of a deal,
Gotcha.
something that actually needs to mature over time, do I just do my 10 days and then sort of like you said with the chaos magic people say, okay, that's happening, and just let it go and go to the next thing, or maybe the next step in making it happen?
Well, there are different ways to look at that, and I appreciate you saying that. Let me give you two different possibilities and perspectives. And I liked that you said it would violate the law of physics for it to happen in 10 days. I was in the same situation when I first devised this 10-day challenge. I could have said, in all honesty, the same thing. What I'm asking for would pretty much defy the laws of physics, or certainly, within 10 days. But I said, well, but it is what I want. So I decided to burn the fleet and just go ahead and do it. Or tattoo the face is a new expression that we've been working with. And, so I decided to just throw myself into it, completely, even though I was logically aware of exactly the kind of thing you were just saying, apropos of my own needs. And so that's one way of doing it, just saying, look, I'm going to burn the fleet and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. That's what I did, the first time out. And it really did produce something that I regard as pretty extraordinary. However, I'll add this as well. My current challenge, I wrote the following words. I am progressing toward.
I gotcha.
And the reason I wrote that is because I don't know, when I was writing it, I thought to myself, I was having trouble believing that 10 days alone would be a sufficient time interval for what I needed to come to pass. And I guess there was a part of me that felt I wasn't even entirely certain that what I want ought to occur within 10 days, because there might be some other things that I need to accomplish, achieve, experience in life before the ultimate fruition of what I want. So I chose on this current round to write, I am progressing toward. But I didn't mean progressing toward in some sort of a slow or languid way, but in a really concrete way. But that was how I chose to write it, because I felt that there might be other things in life that I need to cover before this thing that I want comes to full fruition. So there are two different ways to do it. You know, you could say, I'm going to burn the fleet, and I'm just going to say, I want this. Or you could say, I am progressing toward, if you feel that that really fits the nature of the thing that you're wishing for. Does that help?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. So let's see. Next question is from Jack. And maybe, Mitch, you could explain this too, because I don't understand the question. Please discuss watch. Does that ring a bell? Is that yeah, I'm not sure either. Okay, maybe Jack, if you could, yeah, watch, WATCH. The last step on Tim's chart. Oh, okay. Maybe I can pop that up for a second. So
yeah,
I can look at that.
I think, yeah, I think what Tim is saying there. Hang on once. Let's see. I am DM. Is there a watch here? He's probably, it's being blocked by my screen. Sorry. I think what Tim is driving at is, watch for the arrival of what you're looking for very, very, very carefully, because of the fact that we're not conditioning how the wished for thing arrives. Watch very carefully for its arrival, because it could sneak up in some way that's completely unexpected, that's completely remarkable, or that's completely mundane, and it will slip past you unawares. Be very hawk-eyed and vigilant. Don't let any opportunity pass. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jack says thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to pop this off now. Here we go. Great. So the next question is from Jim, and thanks. So the elements from chapter 4, affirmations, visualizing, prayer, chant, and meditate each day. Just asking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that those are among the steps. And don't worry, as I point out, I don't get hung up on whether must be rendered in past tense, present tense, future tense. It's unimportant as long as it's emotionally persuasive to you. I think that Neville's method, of course, which I read about in the second to last chapter of the book, is to devise a small scene, a drama in your mind, of which you are a part, that implies the arrival of what you want. And I would employ that. I would employ affirmations. I would employ visualizations. I would employ repetitive mantras. I would employ prayer. I would employ chanting, if that's something that you wish to do. Everything. These 10 days are a metaphysical D-Day. You throw everything at your objective. Does that help?
Definitely does for me. And let us know, Jim, if that was helpful, and if you have any follow-up questions for that. And if anybody would like to hop on microphone, let me know. Just let me know, and I'll make a note and unmute you. But okay, here's one from Meredith. And Meredith is asking, Mitch, could you explain the significance of number 10? Why 10, not 20? The audio is cutting out a bit on my end, so I might have missed the answer.
Right.
Also, what if the goal we want is what we is the thing we really, really want, but what if we are mistaken? For instance, I want this job, but I really want security. I have been using the "what do I really want" exercise you mentioned last week. Thank you.
Yes. There were two questions there. And as far as why 10 days as opposed to 20 or 7 or what have you, it just struck me intuitively that 10 days was a period of time that was long enough to allow for a gestation process, but not so long that our attention would wander. I thought 10 days was a period of time in which things could be given, things were given enough of an interval to occur, to unfold, to arrive, but not so long a time that it would become tedious, and we could maintain the intensity of our wish. Now, the second part of the question is, what if we lack perspective? What if we make a mistake? What if I'm wrong about something? And I guess I want us to use these 10 days as kind of an experiment to say, well, you know, we're going to allow ourselves the freedom to take a risk. We're going to allow ourselves the freedom to take a risk. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his journals when he was young, wrote that he conducted his experiments in the mind because he felt that if he was wrong about something, and that if he had conducted them in the mind, there was time enough for either a higher power to communicate to him that he was wrong, his own intuition to come to his rescue, or in any case, he wouldn't be shouldering other people with the consequences of what he was doing, because these were experiments of a mental nature. There's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said for that. I think that's part of the inner dimension of Christ's stick, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. It seems to me that if you are focusing on something within, then you're being harmless as a dove insofar as you're not visiting a burden or a consequence upon another person. You're taking it on yourself, and you are being asked to be wise as a serpent, of course, which means mustering as much perspective as you can. And although full perspective is never really ours, I do think we have great moments of perspective. I mean, if one takes seriously the dictum, as above, so below, which I do, then we have to believe that there are moments in life when we can see life in its infinitude. And so I don't think that we should conscript ourselves to a feeling that we don't have any perspective. We do have perspective at times when we're in a sensitive state. And I think what I'm asking all of us to do, myself included, is to dedicate these 10 days with maybe a little bit of a sense of virtuous risk. Look, we take risks all the time. We make decisions all the time in the material world. We don't know, am I right, am I wrong? You know, sometimes it's making a purchase, accepting a job, accepting a social date, refusing a social date. You know, it's never entirely clear. And we face similar states with the metaphysical all the time. I would say allow yourself to take a risk, but be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. You're not throwing caution or resources to the wind. You're not spending ruinous sums of money. You're not enlisting other people in campaigns that might be disastrous. You know, this is a largely, although it should have context within your own activities, it's largely an exercise that draws upon your own psyche. And I would say proceed with confidence.
Okay, so this question's from Cindy. Cindy's asking, what if the wish is something for another person?
I think that's totally fine. As long as you feel it passionately. If you really feel it passionately and you keep up your focus, and to the best of your ability, it's something that the other person would want for him or herself, I think that's great.
Great. So I think those are the only questions we have right now, but I do want to ask if anybody would like to hop on microphone now's a good chance. We still have a little bit longer. Otherwise, I just want to chime in and also reaffirm that meditation for me is a really good, and I know that's not the point. Like, in Zen, they say that's Makyo and don't pay attention to but for me, meditation is always enhanced synchronicities. I'm not looking for those to happen, but there's just something about an intense period of contemplative silence and focusing on the body and the senses and allowing your awareness to be in your own mind. That's really powerful. And I feel like that could be very helpful. So I just kind of want to reaffirm what you said about meditation being really helpful as one of the practices we could do.
Yes. And don't neglect to use, and I've spoken about this previously on our webinars, and I've spoken about this in the Miracle Club. Don't neglect to use those few minutes of great relaxation you experience before drifting off to sleep at night, and that you experience once again in a slightly different way when you're coming to wakefulness in the morning. That hypnagogic state is a state of tremendous subtlety, suggestibility, mental power, because your rational defenses are down at that time of day, and that's a natural meditative time of day that we all enter and that we all come into. And so use that time. Always rest assured that I'm going to be thinking of our group effort, that you can reach out to me through email if you want a piece of clarity, or frankly, if you're in need of a piece of support, I might look for your support as well. And you will definitely hear back from me. This is something for all of us to try as a group. And I would appreciate it if at the end of the 10 days you write to me and tell me what happened. And don't feel shy. If it was a bad experience, which I sincerely hope it will not be, I want to hear from you. If it was a great experience, I want to hear from you. If you're wondering about it, I want to hear from you. This is something for us to really try as mature adults and to try together. So feel completely at liberty to be in touch with me.
Great. And on that note, too, Sarah's mentioning that we can commune at 3 p.m. Eastern. And Sarah, I knew you were doing that for a while, too, on the Facebook group, right? So that's one thing we can actually, for those of you who use Facebook, the Miracle Club group is there. A lot of you who've probably come here from there. So that's a great practice. Maybe we can do that, Sarah, and just make a note to come in and touch base.
We can all communicate on that page. Sarah maintains the Miracle Club page on Facebook. You guys are all very welcome to join. I encourage it, and we can exchange thoughts and ideas there as well about this exercise.
Excellent. So I think we might have one more question. Meredith, would you like to unmute yourself? I see you've got your hand raised, so feel free to just press the unmute button.
Hi, everybody. Okay, if I may, I have just one more question.
Please.
Mitch, what about when you have the goal, you're doing the affirmations, the meditation, you're very mindful and dedicated in your practice, but also you feel blocked, that there isn't movement happening? How do you, the whole idea of knowing and doing, and things aren't sort of gelling? And I know the importance of being open, right, to how it might manifest, but your thoughts on that would be very appreciated.
Absolutely. I wrestle with that myself. I mean, I go through periods where maybe something that seemed, some possibility that seemed very promising suddenly seems to recede, and I feel emotional about it, negative, about it. And I go through that myself. I would try to remember this. I think that when we're looking for something that's very, very important to us, there's almost a natural cyclical quality that comes in life. And sometimes a day or even a morning that can seem very disappointing and dreary, that can even be evoking of anger or sorrow, that can almost be the prelude to a reverse pattern that comes the following day. I think that when we're seeking something, it would run contrary to human nature if there were total consistency. I mean, there's not total consistency in the natural world. There's not total consistency in the weather. There's not total consistency in any of the natural elements that we see around us or in our own moods. And I think that we're being too hard on ourselves to ask for total consistency. It's quite remarkable sometimes. It's quite characterized by these ebb and flow cycles that can occur very, very closely to one another. And it's almost a given that if you're feeling down one day in pursuit of something, the next day you might feel lifted up. And for inspiration in that regard, I would take a look at Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay Compensation, in which he talks about these natural cycles of life. I think it's one of the greatest things he ever wrote. It's the closest he ever came, it seems to me, to devising a whole philosophy of life, a whole metaphysics of life in the space of a single essay. And I probably reread that essay once every 9 months at least. So that's one window on the cyclical nature of human life. In my book, The Miracle of a Definite Chief Aim, I also talk about something that I call the law of cycles, where sometimes we're just standing in place. And if you stand in place, even when you're feeling battered by the weather will change. It's a natural law, as above, so below. And so I would say that when you're feeling those periods of depletion, and I will be feeling them with you, bear in mind that it's actually quite realistic that just could be the prelude to a cycle of uplift. And we're going to go through swings and moods while we're doing something like this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. That was a great question. Very helpful, I think, for all of us.
Totally. Very helpful. Thank you.
So Sarah has posted the link in the chat box to the Miracle Club Facebook group. So feel free to tune in with us over these next 10 days as we check in with each other at 3 p.m. And if you don't use Facebook or simply aren't around a phone or laptop, just be there with us, just take a moment at 3 p.m.
Please.
And yeah, I think that's everything. Happy manifesting. Thank you.
Yes, exactly.
Great, Mitch. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I took some notes. I'm going to post those. And this should be available for everybody tonight. Actually, I'll just upload the recording this evening, a little bit later this evening. So, and we'll talk about when the next one's going to be, Mitch, and you and I will have a chat about that and figure out a good date. It'd be great to check in with everybody after this cycle of practice.
Great.
Yep. Okay.
I wish you all just the most wonderful 10 days. I'll be doing, as I said, I'm on day 8 of my current challenge. I'll be starting it over with a new ideal in a couple of days. So don't worry, if you need 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours to come up with your specific aim, you're not going to miss the train. We'll all be doing this together. And I look forward to hearing how this goes for everybody.
Fantastic. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Mitch. Bye.
Thanks, y'all. Bye. Thank you.